Well, good evening everyone and welcome to One Hub Racing Season 15 of the Pinnacle tier, and we're back after the mid-season break. Hopefully everyone is nicely well rested after last week's charity event at the 100% distance race at Germany. This is round 6M. We're now into the second half of the shortened season and at the Gilles Villeneuve circuit here in Montreal, Canada, on the Ile Notre Dame man-made island with the circuit on top of it. So it looks like we're just a couple of minutes away from going to the track. Apologies for starting the stream just a little bit late. I've been having issues starting my own stream for the podium race earlier and then this one as well. But we seem to be up and running. It's certainly live as best as I can tell. So good evening to everyone that is slowly filtering in then. So long straights and tight walls, differing tyre strategies makes this race typically fun for all the drivers involved. Overtaking is possible, as is the chances to crash. And don't be surprised to see some unlikely high-placed finishes. It can be a tricky track to nail the perfect lap and also sees a difference in setups. Do these drivers decide to go for Downforce to help them around the low traction areas in sectors 1 and 2, or is it all about maxing your engine down the straights? Only time will tell as to who got it right. So the Circuit de Gilles Villeneuve, located on the man-made Notre Dame Island, sees the drivers tackle 14 challenging corners, 6 to the left and 8 to the right. 3 DRS zones provide the drivers with plenty of opportunities to overtake, with the first and final turns providing some great action over the years. A very short pit lane will see drivers opting for different strategies as they scramble for track position, and will we see anyone tonight end their race in the infamous Wall of Champions. So it looks like we've pretty much got everyone set up. We are missing a couple of drivers tonight. There's a few things to talk about. Obviously once we reach the sort of a mid-season point, then driver contracts do come into question. Now, One Hub do a unique thing where certain teams will only employ certain drivers depending on previous results, how quick they are, that sort of thing. So generally you'll find the quicker guys in the likes of the Mercedes, the Ferraris, the Red Bulls, and then you'll see the slower guys further down the grid, the Alfa Romeos, the Williams, the Haas, that sort of thing. The anomaly is always Williams. Williams being at the end of the pit lane means if everyone comes into the pits at the same time, whoever's in the Williams can usually get the jump on a few people, which we saw last week, 2 weeks ago I should say, at Singapore, with Louie getting the jump from third to first. That's because at the end of the pit lane they don't get held up. Now usually you'll find the quickest guys in the top teams, the slowest guys in the bottom teams, and there has been one change. And that's Ollie Flavel, and I'll talk about him briefly because he was called into the drivers' press conference a couple of days ago to talk about what's happened. So Ollie spent the first half of this season in the Red Bull, and he's now being, if you like, demoted down to the McLaren team and replaced by Toxic Tomato, who of course has picked up the unlikeliest of unlikely wins at Austria and also had a couple of more podiums as well. So the change, I think, is probably justified in most people's eyes. Although Ollie himself has turned around and said in the press conference before the race, basically saying he feels hard done by for it. He feels that he's done a good enough job alongside his teammate and good friend Midnight as well in the Red Bull. Them two were working well together off and on the track, and he's had some points finishes, but his overall consistency has deemed to not be good enough by Red Bull. His overall performances have not been deemed good enough by Red Bull, and they've decided to pluck Toxic Tomato, who's having a great season for McLaren, and basically they've done the old switcheroo. So Ollie is now in the McLaren, and Toxic Tomato has replaced him in the Red Bull. Ollie obviously very disappointed by that. He did say that he had a good working relationship with Midnight, so it'll be interesting to see how Ollie bounces back from this now. He's in the McLaren for the second half of the season. It'll be interesting to see if Toxic Tomato can continue his good form now he's in the Red Bull, and it'll be interesting as well to see how Midnight copes with having a new teammate. A new teammate means new challenges, and so we've got 5 races now in the second half of this shortened season 15 to really see what those 3 drivers can eventually do. Good evening to everyone slowly filtering their way in. It's Colin, always first on stream with the yo back to you, my friend, and obviously you'll probably let me know what the weather's going to be like in qualifying in a race once we eventually do go to the track. There is a slight delay, but it looks like some of the drivers are slowly starting to ready up. We are missing a few, but it looks like we're missing one of the Renault drivers and one of the Haas drivers as well. Hopefully they can get in before we decide to go racing. So one of the questions put forward to all of these drivers before the race was, how are you feeling coming into the second half of the season? Did you enjoy the week away from the trials and tribulations of league racing? Some of them obviously took part in the charity event, and well done to anyone that did take part and get to the end of the race. It was a very entertaining race with the different weather different weather moments happening, I should say, in the race, and also the fact it's 100% race distance. Quite a lot of drivers are unfamiliar with a full race distance. Most leagues, including One Hub, does the old tried and tested 50% race distance, but most of them are happy to be back. Skeeven as well, basically one of the questions put to him was, where do you think you're going to be tonight? And he said, I'll be on the back row of the grid. I don't believe it, Skeeven. I know you very well. I've known you for a few years now, raced and commentated on you. And I don't think we'll be seeing Skeeven on the back of the field. Another driver as well, talking about his chances for the second half of the season, is White Fountain, who again, thank you very much to him for being our continued lobby host and setting everything up for us so we can actually go racing. He does have 1 point to his name, which he's very happy about, and he'd like at least one more before the end of the season. So it looks like we are now slowly starting to ready up and go to the track as more and more people do come in. Good evening to Jess, good evening to Matthews as well, who's come on stream to say hello. And very, very shortly we'll be going to the qualifying session here for Canada. But before we do, we might as well talk about the standings then. So last week, Danny in the Mercedes was not here. He was an absentee. So Louie then, with another win, goes to the top of the standings and increases his lead as well. He's now leading away 101 points after just 5 races. And he's 39 points ahead of Danny, who still occupies that second place. Toxic in third on 59 points, just 3 points behind now in the Red Bull. Rafa in fourth on 45, and Midnight in the second Red Bull in fifth on 44. As for the constructors, Williams have a very commanding lead, 146 points. They're 47 ahead of Mercedes, currently sitting in second on 99. Ferrari in third on 64. McLaren in fourth on 61. And then the Aston Martin Red Bull team in 5th on 48. Then it's Racing Point on 32, Alfa Romeo 27, Renault on 17, Haas on 16, and Toro Rosso bringing up the rear again in 10th place on 5 points. So it looks like then that Louie again is having slight connection issues, but hopefully everyone is syncing up and we can go to the track. Now, I'm not too sure what the precision weather is. I haven't actually gone on there to see. I know they are still racing, but the podium tier took place at 6:30. It was dry qualifying, and then we had heavy rain towards the end of the race as well, so don't be surprised if there's more rain. We seem to be getting a lot of rain this season across all the tiers in One Hub Racing, so we'll bring up all the details that we do need, just so we know exactly what we're doing. There we go. So everything's up and ready to go. You can see everyone in the pits. 18-minute qualifying session here, so only just started as you wait to see the first few drivers filter out onto track. I'll be expecting a weather update in the chat sooner rather than later. Hopefully we know exactly what is going on. So Toxic then in the Red Bulls making a change onto the mediums. Looks like he's coming out for his banker lap. I'll be expecting most people here to be setting their best time on the soft tyres. Softs and mediums will be the way to go, certainly if the track remains dry and the weather remains clear for the full 35 laps. Probably 2 stints on the mediums, 1 on the softs at various stages of the race, but you can expect pretty much everyone inside the top 10 to be starting on the soft tyres. So more and more drivers slowly starting to filter out on circuit. Ash Best, I think, is one of the first. He's joined out there by the McLaren of Larkin and also the Ferrari of T1000 Zach. So 18 drivers, we're missing 2. And I'll be very surprised if we have 18 drivers finishing this race. It's a very tricky circuit to get right. Some people call it a street circuit. I don't. Personally, I think there's only 3 true street circuits out there, and that's Monaco, Singapore, and the Baku City circuit in Azerbaijan. Some people also turn around and say Australia is a street circuit. Technically it is, because it does take place on public roads, but with the runoff areas and the barriers somewhat away from the track, it's not a true street circuit. Neither is this one either. It is built on a man-made island, and the circuit's being plopped on top of it for us, and it is generally a fan and driver's favourite. 3 DRS zones here. The first one coming sort of halfway round sector 2, and then the 2 main ones here obviously down the back straight, and then you have the final chicane, and then the third one here as well for Aspesh has just opened up in his Racing Point to come across the line and start his first flying lap. Track is starting to get very busy, just a few cars left in the garage at the moment, biding their time, waiting to come out. There's plenty of time for these drivers to get out there and do 3 timed laps, but these guys will have to be very careful. I found out twice to my own problems that if you unfortunately invalidate at the final chicane, it pretty much says, well, your next lap is going to be invalidated as well. So don't be surprised if there's a few, when we go on board with some people, we see a few red track maps. And if we do, then we know they've unfortunately made a bit of a boo-boo somewhere on the lap, and it has been invalidated. The strict corner cutting rules that One Hub employs across all 3 tiers. Again, don't be surprised to see some drivers pick up 3, 6, 9, 12 or even 15 seconds worth of penalties as the race goes on. So Ash Best then, purple in sector 2 as you would imagine. He is the first driver that is on a flying lap. Immediately on the soft tyres as well. Audible beep in the air, finger on the button, opening up the DRS. Moving all the way up to close to 210 mile an hour. Heavy braking for the final chicane. Looks like he got a nice line through there, but a bit too much overspeed, and he's clipped the wall of champions, but he's got away with it, and he's the first driver to post a respectable lap time of a 108.198. But I'll be expecting quite a few people to be going a lot quicker than that. Cohen's made a mistake somewhere. He's absolutely clattered the bollard on the inside of, I think it was turn 11 there, and you can see that he has invalidated. T1000 Zach now moves to the top of the standings with a 108.094, but just the 2 drivers that have posted lap time so far. Scott Bugner currently running around on the medium tyres. He's joined in by Toxic Tomato and Harry B in the hards. Louie and Midnight remaining in the pits for now, and White Fountain also out there. He's invalidated on his lap. Same for Skeven as well in the Alfa Romeo. Same for Larkin. Same for Thomas. Danny though, he's managed to keep it clean on his first timed lap, so he'll now come up to the line for the Mercedes team. What can he do? Immediately goes into the 107 to a 7.559, taking provisional pole. Just 5 drivers so far have put in lap times. Yellow flags as well at the final chicane, and someone there's absolutely yeeted it off the circuit at the hairpin, getting out of everyone's way. It might have been Paris though, it was. He's just rejoined the circuit. So a few drivers just trying to get out of each other's way. It's a 67-68 second lap around here, so very short, not the shortest on the calendar, but one of the shortest. And with 18 drivers out there, all vying for track space and position, certainly with the last few minutes of qualifying coming sooner rather than later. Don't be surprised to see a few people trip over each other, try to get out of the way. It's difficult to find some track space. It's alright following someone down the last couple of straights to get a nice little toe and increase your top end speed and therefore get a quicker lap time, but you don't want to be behind someone around sector 1 and sector 2. The understeer that you'll gain from the left-right directional changes really will hurt the front downforce and will therefore hurt your overall lap time. So Danny Ben, still the fastest so far, 107.559. Rafa in second place on a 108.014. Zach Ashbest and Scott Bugner rounding out the top 5. So where's Paris in all of this? He's still pounding round. We'll jump on board with him. He hasn't opened his DRS by the looks of it, and he's running in ERS mode 0, and he's absolutely straight lined the right left chicane there at the end of sector 2. So he's racing back to get back to the pit lane. Toxic Tomato out there on the medium tyres, already completed a couple of laps and invalidated. And he is pushing as well. You can see the ERS mode number 4. You'll see a lot of that. A lot of people seem to think that running in ERS mode number 5 for the whole of the qualifying lap means that you get the quickest lap time. It doesn't. The little trick out there that most people do know and do is once you're in the sort of 6th, 7th, 8th gears, you want to be running in ERS mode number 4. It does save a little bit of ERS, and at the same time it does help you get a little bit quicker down the straights as well. So you'll see there that most of his guys, certainly in sector 3, will be running ERS mode number 4 rather than number 5. He's just about to run out, but he's just about saved enough to get across the line, and his first qualifying lap in the Red Bull on the medium tyres, a 108.409. Not a bad lap. 9/10 off of Danny Moreno in the Mercedes, but Toxic is on the medium tyres. So yeah, not a bad lap there from the new Red Bull driver. The new McLaren driver, meanwhile, Ollie, not too good so far, a 111.002. And he's back in the garage as well. So already then, it looks like that the driver switch between the two is justified. Toxic up in the top 5 on the medium tyres. Ollie, the slowest of the 9 drivers that have set a lap time so far. Championship leader Louie in the Williams then on an outlap at the moment. He's invalidated somewhere on an outlap. You can see there he's just saving his ERS. No need to push, no need to open the DRS, as he's just getting ready to go for what will be his first proper timed lap. And the championship leader then with a nearly 40-point advantage already coming into the second half of the season. Danny's non-appearance a couple of weeks ago at Singapore really did hurt him. And Louis jumped up to the top of the standings with a commanding race win as well. Last year's champion and this season's pretty much favourite, I think. Coming into this, most people's favourite certainly is mine. And there we go then, we'll jump on board with Louis in the Rocket Williams for a flying lap here at Canada. So heavy braking down into turn 1 as well. You can take quite a lot of a curve, immediately stamp on the brake, down into first, and then straight up to second, third and fourth to kill the rear wheel spin coming through turn 2. Now there's a lot of directional changes, the right, left, left, right, so you need a good amount of downforce coming through here as well, and you want to stay away from those curves through 3, 4, 5, over to the right hand side for turn 6. very off camber, and you'll get a lot of understeer and then oversteer on exit coming through 7 as well. Get close to the wall, but don't hit it as much as you can. Open up the DRS for the first of 3 attempts on this lap. Underneath the Emirates sign, heavy on the brakes. You can take a lot of curb on the inside, and unfortunately he's done that. The car's being spat out on the other side, and he's taken too much on the exit of the left-hander, and immediately the track map goes red, and that is a lap invalidation for our championship leader. So he'll save his ERS. He should have enough. Hopefully he's got enough fuel. And if the tyres are still up to temperature, which they should be, he might go again. But his teammate Rafa is behind him as well. He's on an out lap, so Louie won't really be helping him down this back straight. Will Louie be in the pits, or is he going to go again? No, he's going to go again. So we'll move away from Louie, find someone else as he goes for a second bite of the cherry to get his first lap time on the board. Colin then down at the hairpin. He's on his first proper flying lap as well. He's got a couple of cars behind him. He'd ideally want someone in front of him to give him a nice tow down the straight. Haven't seen too much teammate work so far. The racing points are close together on the back straight, but not close enough to be helping each other. The Williams guys are close on circuits, so you might see a bit of team play there helping each other down the straight. But here comes Colin then in the Toro Rosso. His first lap time is a 108.611. Immediately up into 8th place. Ashbest has managed to improve in the racing point. He moves himself up onto the front row of the grid, a 107.881, just under halfway through this session now. We've got yellow flags along the main straight and in sector 1 as well, as cars duck and weave and jump out of each other's way to try and find some track space, not hold up anyone else on a qualifying lap. Look, very busy down here at the hairpin, didn't it, involving Ollie in the McLaren, someone behind just jumping out of the way. Rafa as well on an in lap. He moves over to the left hand side, leaving Ollie with track space and clean air in front of him as he pounds this McLaren all the way down the back straight. And Ollie will be looking for a good performance tonight to justify his complaints at being dropped by Red Bull. 111.002 was his quickest so far, immediately up into 8th place with a 108.394, and crucially just a couple of hundredths ahead of Toxic Tomato. So a good job there, Ollie. Up into P9, but Toxic will be looking to increase his own lap time. Now he's certainly on the soft tyres. That lap time the Red Bull driver did was on the mediums, so I'll be expecting Toxic to be well inside the top 10 once he completes this lap. 4 drivers yet to set a lap time. Toxic's new teammate Midnight is one of them. We've also got White Fountain in the Toro Rosso, Paris in the Mercedes, Westy in the Renault as well, yet to put their first lap time in. So we'll jump on board with Midnight. Last season's probably overachiever in my eyes anyway. I was incredibly impressed by his performances. This is a driver that only a couple of seasons ago was in the bottom tier and has steadily worked his way up to be the top tier. He's picked up race wins and multiple podiums, finds himself this season back in the Red Bull after making the mid-season change last year, and immediately then his first lap puts himself up into 2nd place. So a good lap there by the Red Bull driver. 107.681, just over a tenth away from Danny. Louie then has now completed his first time lap, a 107.781, exactly 1/10 ahead of Ashbest, but crucially 2 tenths away from Danny in the Mercedes. So the quick guys at the front of the field, as you would expect. We are still waiting for Paris, who's in the pits, to complete his first lap, and Skeven down in 15th place, a long way off the pace as well. I'd be very surprised if he was on the back row of the grid. He's got plenty of time to get back out there and go for another run or two. Westy then, he's now on his first flying lap. 6.5 minutes left of a qualifying session left to go. So Westy obviously not very happy with that lap, and he's decided to come back into the pit. Same for Zach as well. There's a few drivers out there on out laps, but this is that quiet lull period that we get now with just a few minutes left in the qualifying session. Pretty much everyone back into the pits now. making their final change onto the set of soft tyres, making a few little setup tweaks, maybe changing the fuel mix around a little bit, adding or taking off a little bit of wing, changing around the bias as well, tyre pressures, anything else they're permitted to do in Parc Fermé regulations. Rafa on an outlap, invalidates, so it doesn't matter too much. Teammate Louie also out there as well, he's down the back straight. So Louie then, he's going early towards the end of the qualifying session. Obviously taking advantage of the fact there's just a few cars out there on circuit. Into and out of the final chicane, be careful to not invalidate. Open up the DRS, and Louie then in P3, now starting what will be hopefully his final qualifying run. He might have a bit of extra fuel on board though, so if he does invalidate or make a mistake, he might be able to go again. And he's going to have a nice clear track in front of him. No one in front of him for the best part of a minute. There's only a couple of other cars out there on circuit, his teammate being one of them. There's a few other cars now slowly starting to come out as Louie is a 10th up on his previous best. It won't be enough to get himself on the front row of the grid. So he has to keep finding, keep chipping away, keep finding a couple of hundredths here and there. Leave it just a little bit later on the braking, a little bit sharper on the turning, a little bit heavier on the throttle coming out of all of the low traction zones, trying to find his best time as he can. He's 2.5 tenths up purple in sector 2, so it's getting better and better for Louie. Now it's all important, can he get this right down this back straight? If you get a good exit out of that hairpin, you're going to find a lot of time. Opening up the DRS as well, you can see there he's using as much ERS as is permitted into the final chicane. Now this is the final crucial point. Oh, it was so close to invalidation. He's just kissed the outside of the wall of champions, keeps it in a straight line for the shortest run to the line, and by 400ths of a second Louie does take provisional pole. Danny coming out of the pit lane now would have seen that pop up on his overhead display, so Danny now knows he has to find a little bit of extra time if he wants to be starting this race from P1. Keep an eye on Midnight as well in P3, he could bring a surprise. Harry in 4th, coming back into the pits, he should have time to go back out again. Looks like as well we've got both of the Alfa Romeos, is it? Yeah, the Alfa Romeos are possibly working together, or are they too far apart? They are now too far apart. So we haven't really seen much team play in the qualifying session down this back straight. And more cars are now slowly starting to come out on circuit. Ollie in 11th. Now in the McLaren for the second half of this season. Toxic just behind him in 12th. So that'd be a nice little battle to keep an eye on both qualifying and the race. Larkin in 13th, he's already invalidated. So hopefully he's got enough fuel to have another go. It's Colin as well on his final, what would have been final qualifying run. He's invalidated as well. Skivinen across the line, a 1:11.084 is his best as he now starts his final flying lap as well. He's got the bit between the teeth, he doesn't want to be in a 1:11, that's pretty slow. 3.5 seconds off of the ultimate pace. And he's certainly hustling and bustling this Alfa Romeo around the circuit. Down into second gear, short shifting up to third and then into fourth and fifth to kill the rear wheel spin out of his low traction zone. Sector 2 is a very tricky part of the circuit as well, with the directional changes and the fact that a lot of these drivers do run fairly low downforce setups to help them maximise the top speed down the 2 main straights. Now coming into the hairpin, he's 2 tenths up I think on his previous best, which is nowhere near good enough. We'll stay on board then with Skiven to see if he can find a bit more extra speed. I'll be surprised that he's this far off the pace. I'll be surprised if he starts at the back. So into the final chicane. Oh, it's a bit too much curb, and there we go. Track map goes red, and Skiven's qualifying will be over because that'll invalidate this lap as well. He did a 1:07.850, which would have been good enough to get himself right up inside the top 5. Even if he did find probably a little bit of extra speed coming into and out of the final chicane. But unfortunately for Skiven, that's his qualifying session over, and he will be starting towards the very back of the field. Another driver that really needs to get this final lap right will be Paris. He's yet to set a lap time. Same for White Fountain and Westy as well, who's now coming across the line to start his final lap. So where's Louie and all this? He's back out on circuit. Is he going to get enough time to get round? He'll just manage it. Where's Danny and all this? He's now starting his final flying lap, which this is crucial for the Mercedes driver. You don't want to be making a mistake around here as best as you can. Midnight then, he's just starting his final lap. Where's Harry and all this? He's crossing the line. Thomas is down in the hairpin. and he might just about get across the line unless he is done with his lap. I think he might be done actually and coming back into the pits. Ashbest, he'll have time to cross the line and start his final lap as well. Where's Zach in all this? He's already on his final lap, 1/10 up on his previous best in sector 1. Rafa's made a big mistake somewhere. He won't get enough time to get round and start another lap, so Rafa, unfortunately, one of the Williams drivers, faltering here down in 9th, but the other one's still on provisional pole at the moment. So where's Paris in all of this? He should be somewhere in sector 2. Indeed he is. But we'll keep an eye on these guys at the front of the field. So Louie then did manage to cross the line with just a second to go. Thomas's session is over. P6 is the best he can do. Rafa's session is over. P9 is the best he can do. So Louie had 1 second left to get across. Danny, unfortunately, has failed to improve his lap time. So it will not be pole position then for the Mercedes driver. Where's Midnight and all of this? He invalidated as well. So P3 will be the best for him. We've got Lakitu coming across the line slowly, but Zach will be ahead of him across the line straight up into P3 for him. Toxic Tomato up into P9. Harry fails to improve his lap time down in P6. Is that Colin? It was White Fountain, wasn't it? I think slowly coming across the line. As the rest of these guys, look how busy it is coming into the final chicane. Where's Lakitu and all this? He's back into the pits as well. Ashbest should be coming into and out the final chicane. Is he going to improve in his lap time? Can he get himself up the order a little bit? He does, but only good enough for 7th place. So it looks like then Louie doesn't need to improve. Paris then has failed to put a lap time on the board. Same for White Fountain. Skeven has invalidated. Scott Bugner in 13th is back into the pits. And that is the qualifying session over and done with. Louis takes pole position, a 107.519, 400ths ahead of Danny. So the top 2 in the championship, yet again, top 2 on the grid. Good performance from Zach in the Ferrari in 3rd place. Midnight continues his good performances this season with P4. And the 2nd Ferrari of Lakitu also inside the top 5. So Louis then, yet another pole position for himself and the Williams team. Danny will join him on the front row of the grid. And it's Zach in 3rd, Midnight in 4th, Lakitu in 5th. And the rounding out the top 10 is Harry, 6th place for Haas, Ashbest 7th for Racing Point, Thomas in the Alfa Romeo making his debut tonight, Toxic Tomato in the Red Bull in 9th, Rafa completes the top 10 minutes, Cohen in the Toro Rosso, Ollie now in the McLaren can only do P12, Bugner, Scott Bugner in 13th, Larkin in 14th, Skeven with a 111.084 in 15th. 3 drivers failed to set a lap time, White Fountain, Paris and Westy. I'm going to take a very short break. I'll be back with you guys during the formation lap. So Louis and Danny light up the tyres away from the front row of the grid, trying to get as much temperature into the tyres and brakes as possible on a very short lap around here at Canada. So then we'll bring up the tyre graph. So as I always mention on the formation app, and will continue to do so as well, if you qualify inside the top 10 and the race starts on the dry tyres, you can clearly see, then you have to start on the tyres but you set your best lap on. Everyone of course in qualifying was actually on the soft tyres, so no surprise to see the top 10 all on those tyres again. So the 11th is Colin, he's also on the soft tyres, as is Scott Bugner in 13th, and Paris down in 17th. He'll be wanting to make some quick progress through the back half of the field. Everyone else starting on the medium tyres. I don't think we'll be seeing the hard tyres here tonight. Of course, all these drivers have to make at least 2 pit stops, as is the rules with One Hub, with every shortened season they do before the release of the next game. To spice things up a little bit, you have to make 2 pit stops. So the hard tyres really won't be at play too much tonight. You might see 1 or 2 drivers making the change onto them if they feel they need to, if they have to pit at the end of lap 1 or lap 2 for accident damage, which is possible around this circuit. Do not be surprised to see a safety car or a couple of virtual safety cars tonight. Do not be surprised to see the time. It's people in the wall, accidents and carnage on the opening couple of laps. So Louie then brings the field round at a nice controlled pace. P1 for our championship leader Danny in 2nd place, Zach then in 3rd. Not the first time we've seen that Ferrari at the top of the orders. Everyone else filters their way through the final chicane now. Keep one eye on Ollie Flavel. He'll be wanting to prove his doubters wrong. 12th place in the McLaren team. There's the rest of the field now all filtered away onto the grid. And this will be the moment where the palms start to get sweaty, the heartbeat starts to rise, the adrenaline starts to kick in. This could be the crucial point of the race, getting a clean break away from the grid, keeping it clean in the first couple of corners. Can Danny get the jump on Louie? We've got the lights coming on now, and the second half of the season here at Canada. It's go. Good start by all the drivers. Louie will keep hold of the inside line, might cut across to block Danny off. Indeed he does. Zach filters into 3rd place as well, as the rest of the midfield all starts to bunch up, but Louie holds on to P1, Danny 2nd, Zach in 3rd, Midnight in 4th, Lakitu in 5th. Not much changes happening. There's a few positions and squabbling going on with the midfield, as you would expect further back here as well. We'll jump on board with Larkin as his teammate Ollie gains a position as well. Paris already up into P13. He needs to make hay whilst everyone is close together. A nice little dive bomb up the inside of Larkin as well. It's going to squeeze the McLaren on exit, and Paris will have the better line out of the corner as well. So Paris making some good positions up early on. We've got Thomas on debut alongside Colin for P9 and P10, but the Alfa Romeo driver backs out of it. Ollie then in 11th might try to take advantage of this, coming down into the hairpin. Thomas very heavy over the curb. He already has a bit of damage there, it looks like, on the outside of his front wing as well, and he's losing positions here as Paris tries to complete this move around the outside. So Thomas finding life difficult already in One Hub with a bit of damage there on his front wing. He might pit in early, he might carry it with him. But coming towards the end of lap 1, these guys further back in the midfield really squabbling for position. 2 by 2 into the final chicane. On board with Larkin again is into and out of the final chicane. I think I just saw Thomas flash past in the mirror into the pits. Indeed he is. So Skeven at the back of the field, his teammate in the pits. But ending lap 1, Louie still leads 2 tenths, 4 tenths now ahead of Danny. And these two are slowly starting to break away from Zach in 3rd. He's got Midnight, the ever impressive Midnight in the Red Bull, hounding the back of that Ferrari for P3. Lakitu hanging on well in P5. Ashbest, good performance again from the Racing Point driver, hanging on to 6th. Harry Raffa in 8th, he's made 2 positions up. Cohen 9th. Ollie now finds himself inside the top 10. Parisen up into 11th. Good start from towards the back of the field on those soft tyres. You want to get past Ollie sooner rather than later and start chipping away at those guys in the lower half of the top 10. Larkin keeping him honest though in 12th. Toxic in 13th. He's gone backwards a little bit. White Fountain in 14th as well. Bugner as well. He's made a mistake. I think he's lost a couple of positions. Ashbest and Harry exchanging positions at the hairpin. Skeven 16th. Westy 17th. I believe he might have a bit of damage on the front wing. Indeed he has. He's missing an end plate on the left hand side. Skeven going slowly as well. So is he just handing the position back to Westy there? Does Skeven have a bit of a cheeky dive bomb? Make a bit of contact with the Renault, and he's allowed that driver back through. Thomasen not looking good, already making his first pit stop to fix damage. Lap 3, DRS now enabled. Detection point for the first one just before the end of sector 1. You can see it on the track map there, that green dot at the exit of turn 6. It's basically saying if you're within a second, you will get DRS in Sector 2, and then the second detection point is before the end of Sector 2, and you'll get 2 bites of the cherry. You'll get it all the way down the back straight, and if you manage to complete the move into the final chicane, you'll get the DRS again to slowly try and pull away into the braking zone for turn 1. And Danny will be very wary of that, and you won't be wanting to follow Louie's wheel tracks for too long. Other driver in the pits as well. Westy's made a pit stop, gone on to the hard tyres. So as I said there on the formation lap, the hard tyres won't be at play too much, but you might see a couple of drivers go onto them if they have to pit very early to fix accident damage. That's exactly what Westy has done. So here we go then. This is the first real attempt that Danny is going to have at Louie with the DRS. Does Louie feel the need to defend? He doesn't. Sticks to the racing line. Danny says thank you. Up the inside into the final chicane. Cool as you like. Into and out of it as well. And we've got a new race leader. Danny takes a lead going into lap 4 in these overcast conditions here at Canada. Not too sure if we're going to get any rain, but certainly for now the clouds are overhead. The sunlight is nowhere to be seen. Don't be surprised if we do get some rain in this race. We seem to get rain in every race in One Hub this season, and it's starting to upset a few drivers. We'd like a dry race at some point, but for now it's dry anyway, and these guys can pound round on these soft tyres. Danny leads Louie in second. Zach still holding on to third. Midnight fourth. Lakitu fifth. These guys pretty happy to follow each other around. Various lap times are being traded and exchanged. Thomas then currently with the new fastest lap, but I'll be expecting that to tumble as the race goes on. Harry then into 6th has managed to get past Ash Best's racing point. Rafa still holding on to 8th. Ollie Flavel then up inside the points in 9th, just ahead of Colin. Paris Burrell in 11th, getting very close to the rear wing of that Toro Rosso. Larkin holding on as well. Toxic Tomato down in 13th place. So we'll bring up then the position changes from the start. So Danny and Louie, we know they've exchanged positions. Meanwhile, we've got Midnight and Zach exchanging positions down the back straight as well. So Midnight's gaining position from the start, as has Danny. Zach picks up a 3-second time penalty for yeeting it over the curbs at the final chicane. We've got Rafa in the pits as well. So Ollie's made 4 positions up from the start. Paris is the biggest mover. He's made 7. Now finds himself inside the top 10. The biggest loser is Rafa. Well, he's in the pits at the moment, so that's expected. Thomas has lost 9 positions, having to pit at the end of the opening laps to fix accident damage. So a few position changes. The main one being Danny has now managed to get past Louie for the race lead. And Paris will be pushing on with his soft tyres, trying to make up as many positions as possible. And again, overcast conditions here at Canada. Will we see any rain? And Paris are getting very twitchy on exit. You get a lot of understeer following cars closely in front around sector 2. Oh, that's late on the brakes, and he almost had to take a bit of avoiding action there. Almost creamed it right into the back of Cohen. And Ollie then, he's now out of DRS range from Ash Best, who in turn's also out of DRS range from Harry, who's getting the hurry up here, pushing the key too hard into the final chicane. We've got pit stops up ahead as well. Midnight takes the lead. Danny, Louie and Zach all into the pits. They're joined by Cohen and Toxic Tomato. So some of these runners on the soft tyres getting off of them nice and early, going on to the first of 2 stints on the mediums, getting their first pit stop out of the way. So the order will chop and change now for the next few laps, as the pit lane starts to get a bit busy with all of these soft runners coming in and jumping onto the mediums sooner rather than later. Midnight now leads 2 seconds, nearly 2 seconds ahead of Lakitu, who's been given a hurry up by Harry in 3rd, Ash in 4th, Ollie now up to the dizzying heights of P5, Paris less than a second behind in 6th. Wanted to take advantage of more drivers pitting, moving up the order. Larkin 7th, Scott Bugner now in 8th, Skeeven in 9th, White Fountain inside the top 10. Danny then back out of the pits, just over a second ahead of Louie. Zach keeping them honest as well. Rafa is there and thereabouts, just a second and a half off. He pitted a couple of laps ago, so Rafa might try and get the undercut on the few drivers just ahead of him. We'll have to see how all that plays out in the next few laps. Thomas leaves the session, not too sure if he's just disconnected or if he's rage quit. Can't tell. His car's still circulating round. All the other soft runners now into the pits. Midnight in as well. Lakitu and all the others as well. So Ollie then. So McLaren 1-2. Not often we've seen that. Starting on the medium tyres means they can go a little longer into the race, obviously. So Ollie then We'll enjoy a couple of laps in the lead as Thomas does rejoin the session. So he's just got the blue screen of death. He's managed to get back in and hopefully he'll be able to get back into his car. So it's a McLaren 1-2 during the first round of the pit stop. Skeeven now up into the dizzying heights of P3. He's that high up, he'll be getting a nosebleed. White Fountain, same for him in 4th. Danny Wren slowly moving back up the order. Louie now up into 6th. Midnight rejoins. Hasn't really gained or lost anything. In fact, no, he has. He's managed to get the jump on Zach, hasn't he? Zach was ahead of Midnight before the pit stops. I'm pretty sure he was. Yeah, he was. So Midnight then has managed to get the jump on Zach. That'll be bad news for the Ferrari driver who has a 3-second time penalty already. Rafa has now got himself involved with the Ferraris. Finds himself in P9 just ahead of Lakitu. Harry, Colin, Ashbest not too far behind either. Into the hairpin. Crucial exit is needed through here. It's a very good exit from Rafa as well. He might have just done enough there to get away. Bring up the telemetry as well. Just see what people are running ERS mode wise down these straights. Be very careful. You want to save as much ERS around there because it really does burn up around a lap like this. And the McLarens continue to lead. Danny getting past White Fountain. And so that's the new fastest lap at the same time as well. Louie will be wanting to get past that Toro Rosso sooner rather than later to keep the chase and the pressure on the Mercedes ahead. White Fountain getting it a little wrong there through the right left kink, kicking up a bit of dirt off those rear tyres and getting very close to that wall as well. No one in the wall majorly yet. We've had a few people in to fix accident damage for little bits of carbon fibre coming off the front wing, but we've had no one out of the race, no one in the wall. Just coming down in 13th. Picks up a 3-second time penalty, and Louie there running over the curbs. The understeer you can see there really hurting the front of that car as he just sets himself up, fiddling around with the fuel mixes and the ERS mode as well. White Fountain goes deep into the hairpin and cuts back, locking up the right front, and I think White Fountain will give us position up. He's not in the position to be fighting Louie. Indeed, just backs out of it a little bit and allows the Williams driver through. Meanwhile, the McLaren drivers are carrying on, as is Skeeven. Danny into and out of the final chicane, being hunted down by Louie. He's lost time behind White Fountain. That gap is now just over 2 seconds. In the background as well, you've got Rafa, Lakitu and Harry very close together. Paris picks up a 3-second time penalty. All the way down in 14th place. And we've got some groups of people out there at the moment. Scott picks up a 3-second penalty. There's going to be plenty of penalties tonight, such as the strict corner cutting rules enforced and employed by One Hub, and this is a circuit where it's difficult to keep it clean. It really is. Myself in the podium race, I picked up 6 seconds worth of penalties, and I was one of the cleanest out there. We had a few people that were well into the teens in terms of penalties. I think the highest I saw was 14 seconds. We might get close to that tonight. Quite a few people already out there with 3 seconds. Lakitu up the inside of Rafa. This isn't a place to overtake, and Rafa's had to take avoiding action. Goes around the bollard, which the drivers are supposed to do. Whether he'll give the position up or not, I don't know. Lakitu was there. He was up the inside. It was a legit move. And a bit of puff of smoke there from the front right, and Rafa should give his position up. He had to jump off the circuit to take avoiding action. The position was gone. And even though Rafa hasn't given it up, he has fallen behind, straight back inside the slipstream now behind the Ferrari. But look at that, here comes Harry. He wants a piece of this action as well. Into the final chicane. It's all going to get very busy through here, but they've managed to just about keep it nice and clean. Especially been hoping and praying someone would have been in the wall there to gain him a position. But Rafa then has finally lost that position to Lakitu, and Harry wants to apply as much pressure to the back of the Williams. So Lakitu is now free. He'll slowly close up on White Fountain. It's still a McLaren 1-2. Skeeven still holding P3, but Danny is closing that gap with each passing corner and each passing sector. And these guys in the medium tyres will go for a few more laps and probably bolt on a second set of mediums, maybe go for the softs towards the end of the race. And again, it's still overcast out there, but a little bit of sunlight is starting to creep through. I'm unsure what the weather is going to be for this race. If anyone does know, do put it up just so we all get clear. But it looks like, for now at least, it's going to be overcast but dry, which is exactly what we want. So Skeeven then over to the right hand side. It's a half-hearted attempt to defend, but it was never going to happen. And Skeeven is not in a fight with Danny. He's yet to even make his first pit stop. And we've got Lakitu and White Fountain's hemorrhaging positions. What's happened here to the Toro Rosso drive? He's going slowly down the back straight. It's not a puncher, is it? Is he had an off somewhere? I'm not too sure, but he's back up to speed now. But he's He's moved over and let a lot of people through there, so I'm not too sure what's happened to the Toro Rosso drivers all the way down in 14th when he was sort of around where Zach and Lakitu was in 7th and 8th. So I'm not sure what happened to White Fountain. Oh, his teammate has pirouetted in front of him. Oh, and he don't ask drivers to do that. I think Colin paused the game and immediately did a car reset. So both the Toro Rossos in the space of 30 seconds have had a bit of a nightmare and now find themselves down in 14th and 15th. They're at the bottom of the constructors, and they're not going to be increasing that anytime soon. 14th and 15th so far for them, and they've both made mistakes in the last minute or so. Thomas still going around in 18th, but a long way back, but still we're nearly a third of the way through this race, and all 18 that started still continuing on. Not even would have enjoyed a few laps at the front of the field, and this would have benefited Ollie, to be honest, because he's on his own, he's in clean air, he can just pound around, set the lap times and the targets that he needs to, getting himself ready to make his first pit stop. But Danny is closing up. He's already managed to get past Larkin coming into the final chicane. Skeeven's still holding on to 4th, and he's closed up a little bit on the McLaren of Larkin, and Louie still behind Skeeven as well. Toxic Tomato picks up a 3-second time penalty for exceeding track limits too many times. So Danny is doing a good job here of carving his way through the midfield, we'll call them, because they're yet to make their first stop. And Louie is really struggling at this stage with the medium tyres. Following cars ahead as well, but yeah, you can just see it picked up a little bit of understeer there, coming through 6 and 7, and again through 8 and 9. And he's not really gaining the time that he wants on Skeeven, and Skeeven's found a little bit of pace at this phase of the race as well, right close behind Larkin. A good exit here from the hairpin. He might have an opportunity with the DRS down this back straight. Scott Bugner and White Fountain exchanging positions for P14 and 15 halfway around the back of the lap. So Skeeven then gaining time all the time on Larkin ahead, but he's not close enough to try anything into the final chicane. Larkin's made a bit of a mistake through there, slow out of it as well. That would have been an opportunity for Skeeven. He could see a potential P3 here, up the inside into the braking zone for turn 1. Larkin will give him the space, but he's got the preferred line now for the inside of turn 2. Who's going to get the better exit through here? They pretty much both do. We'll jump on board with Louie, who will be not enjoying this. He doesn't want these two side by side. They're going to be holding each other up, slowing each other up, and he can see the Mercedes of Danny disappearing. He's not even in the same shot at the moment, and these two are still side by side, as they have been since the turn 1. And now Louie's getting involved in this. Skeeven all of a sudden sees Louie push his way through, and Louie will try basically a double overtake into the right-hander. Larkin sees him early enough, gives him the space, and Louie will be happy that he's managed to get past Poe for them. And now he can disappear and start to give chase back to Danny ahead in P2. But look at that, the gap is almost 4 seconds now. That gap has doubled in the last lap. Oh, and hello, a wild Zach comes out of nowhere. What was that, my friend? You're supposed to brake at some point. He's absolutely creamed into the side of poor old Larkin, who's somewhere back here. And all of a sudden, there's 52 cars on the same piece of tarmac. So these guys are going to be fighting hard over the next couple of corners. I'm not too sure what the hell happened with Zach there. He just came out of nowhere and straight now into the pits as well. Poor old Larkin into the pits as well. It would have been a bit cheesed off there. And Zach immediately retires from the race. So I can only assume that Zach completely fluffed his lines to the braking zone for the hairpin, because he was a long way back, and all of a sudden almost forcing poor old Larkin into the absolute stratosphere there. So Larkin would have been put off by that, into the pits now for his first pit stop. Zach has retired from the race, so we can forget about him. And well, that was a blink and you miss it moment, wasn't it? I'm glad I caught that. Zach appeared out absolutely nowhere. So whilst all that's going on, Ollie has pitted for the first time, rejoined in 9th on a set of medium tyres. So double stinting the mediums, going softs at the end for the new McLaren driver. And look at that, he's just a second ahead of the man that replaced him in Red Bull, Toxic Tomato. If you missed it at the start, we've had the mid-season driver changes. There's only been well, 2 really, if you count Thomas making debut tonight replacing Khalifa, who's dropped down a tier. But the main one really is that Ollie and Toxic Tomato have exchanged positions. Colin retires on, where is he? Turn 3 by the looks of it. And we have a full course yellow, a safety car. So the safety cars come out for Colin retiring at turn 3. That's going to be interesting. Straight away, Harry and Paris into the pits for what will be their second stop. Don't be surprised if more people come in as well. Indeed, Toxic Tomato coming into the pits. Ollie was always going to carry on a fresh set of medium tyres. And we might be seeing them, the guys coming in for the second time, going onto the hard tyres and trying their best to get them to the end. They will, but they might not have the grip. Toxic Tomato goes on to a set of mediums, has a front wing change as well. Scott Bugner is in, going on to the hard tyres. Harry has gone on to the hard tyres. White Fountain going on to the mediums, having a front wing change. Thomas into the pits as well. Westy, this would have worked out really, really well for these guys at the back of the field. They managed to get in because they were close to the pit lane. So a lot of these guys are completing their second stop. I'll be expecting Danny will definitely be in. Louie will definitely be in. Midnight, Lakitu, Rafa, Ashbest. All these guys will be in the pits. Where's Ollie in this? He's in P7. He's got to stick to the Delta time. So unfortunately, he gained a position or two, but he won't be at the very front of the field. So the guys then slowly making their way around now. Coming into the pits. Danny will be in. Of course he will be. Louie will be straight into the pits. Midnight will also be in. Lakitu, Rafa, Ashbest, the top 6 will all be in the pits. Hopefully none of them speed. The last thing you want to do now is speed. No, Ashbest is carrying on, and I think that was a very late call there by the Racing Point driver. So he's doing something different here, and he will take the net lead of the race. But Ashbest has only made one pit stop. Danny has now made his second. Louis has made his second. Ollie, I believe, has only, he's only made the one pit stop as well. So a few drivers are doing something different here. Harry then, he's made his second stop. He's on the hard tyres, and he's come right out there behind Lakitu. Paris then, he's onto the medium tyres. Rafa in and out onto the medium tyres. Larkin is back into the pits as well. So he did one lap, his first pit stop, medium tyres, back in, second pit stop, hard tyres. So some of these drivers then have now completed their second stop. Others have not, and the best thing to do is bring up this little graph here so we know exactly where we stand. So then, to recap, Colin retired on the exit of turn 3. Safety car is now out for the next lap or two. Most of the drivers have been in for their second stop. Ashbest though, he's playing a different game. He still needs to complete his second stop. Same for Ollie in P4, although Ollie had only just been in for a set of medium tyres, so that is an understandable call. Ashbest though, at the end of this lap, would have completed 9 laps on these mediums. I'm surprised he didn't pit. Other drivers, Skeven in P10, still needs to make his second stop, and White Fountain in 13th as well. So yeah, I'm surprised by Ashbest, to be honest with you. Ollie, I understand. I would have done exactly the same thing. He'd only just pitted for a set of medium tyres. Now does Ashbest decide to pit? He doesn't. So Ashbest really is going to stick out there on a used set of medium tyres. You can see there he's completed 9 laps, 10 laps once he crosses the line, as the rest of the field there, as you can see on the track map, slowly starts to catch up with the safety car group. So pretty much bang on half distance here. Ashbest leads on a used set of medium tyres, but still needs to make his second pit stop. Danny then has made his 2 pit stops onto medium tyres. Louis has made his second stop and gone onto the hard tyres, so that'll be an interesting call once we see what happens once we go green flag racing. Ollie in 4th on a relatively new set of medium tyres. He still needs to make his second pit stop. And then it's Midnight in 5th, Lakitu in 6th, Harry in 7th, 6th and 7th going for the hard tyres. Paris in 8th, Rafa 9th, Skeven inside the top 10, still needs to make his second pit stop. So, lap 17, coming into lap 18, the safety car lights are off, it's coming into the pits. Ashbest is going to have his work cut out here. He needs to find time, he needs to find a gap, but he's got some very quick people behind him on fresher set of tyres. This is an unusual and strange call by the Racing Point driver. Maybe he knows something we don't. The green flags come out again. Everyone gets the pedal down to the floor, and Ashbest leads the field away, but still yet to make his second pit stop. We might have some moves going back further back here. We've got Lakitu and Harry dicing over 6th and 7th, and Paris wants to get involved now on the medium tyres. Some of these guys making a change onto the hards. Toxic Tomato and Scott Bugner exchanging positions. There's a spin there from Paris. He's tagged the side of Lakitu and spun that car round. He's reset it onto the track, but finds himself all the way at the back of the field. 3-second time penalty for Midnight, and unfortunately Paris has spun himself all the way down into 16th place. Ashbest immediately gives up the lead to Danny, and Louie will be wanting to push his way through as well. Danny, I think, has probably made a better call going on to the medium tyres, but Louie needs to stay as close to that Mercedes as possible and get past this Racing Point sooner rather than later to make his hard tyres work. They'll come better later on in this race, but the advantage at the moment is going to be with Danny Moreno on those medium tyres. They're quicker, they're grippier, and he'll be able to find a bit of speed and pull away. Ashbest then staying to the inside, gives up that P2 to Louis. He was never going to hold these two off. Ollie then on a relatively fresh set of medium tyres. So the guys in 3rd and 4th still need to make their second pit stop. We have to remember that. Westy in the pits as well. I believe the other drivers that still need to make a second stop. Skeeven in 9th, White Fountain in 11th. But the guys in 3rd and 4th definitely do need to stop again. Midnight then all over the back of the Husky Chocolate McLaren in P4. You'll be wanting to get past these two and try to apply a little bit of pressure to Louis, who's going to be slightly slower. As you can see on those hard tyres, he's not exactly romping away from Ashbest, who's on a very used set of medium tyres. 12, nearly 13 laps completed on them, and Danny now has nearly a 2-second lead. DRS will be enabled and available to these drivers coming into the next lap. And Danny already well out of that 1-second window, and double that now. 2 seconds up the inside from Midnight. That was a late move, but Ollie does see him, gives him the space as well. But he's going to get a slightly better traction there on exit. Gives him the squeeze as well, almost 2 wheels on the grass. Midnight will not thank him for that. No love lost between these two now. They are good friends on and off the track. They'd worked well together in the first half of the season, but now Ollie's made the change and been demoted to McLaren. He's got a point to prove against his former employers and a point to prove against his former teammate. Ollie will not give this position up easily, and Midnight knows he's going to have a battle here to get past his former teammate for P4, because all whilst this is going on, Ashbest is only just there in 3rd, so Midnight is looking at a net podium here, but he wants more, and he's got to be aware because the very fast and feisty Lakitu is only half a second back as well. They've broken away from Harry, who's 2.5 seconds off. He's got Toxic Tomato and Scott Bugner very close behind. Skeeven even closer than that as well in 10th place. And Lakitu on the hard tyres as well, so he's doing a good job hanging on to the back of these guys. And Midnight, they're dancing and weaving around, trying to make his Red Bull loom large in Ollie's rear view mirrors. Kick up a little bit of dust there as Rafa and Skeeven exchange positions for P10. As Midnight try out the inside, he does the old cut back into the braking zone for the hairpin and manages to stamp on the brakes, and Ollie would have not liked that move either. A little bit of contact there between the two of them on exit. We'll jump on board with Lakitu. They've both got the DRS, so who's got the better top end speed? It looks like Ollie ever so slightly. Lakitu, please don't make it 3 wide. That will end in tears, and Midnight then does finally just about manage to get that move completed, but will Ollie come back at him? He won't. He's not close enough. Midnight might try the cheekiest of dive bombs into turn 1. Nope, he's not close enough either, so Midnight finally manages to get the move done past the very feisty and point to proved Ollie Flavel down in 5th place. Lakitu then try to follow his way through, but he's got to bide his time on those hard tyres. They should now be up to optimal temperature, but they're not going to be the best tyres to run at this stage. That's going to be the guys on the mediums as Midnight and Ashbest fight over 3rd and 4th. And now finally Midnight back up into the P3 he wanted once this safety car went back in. And Ashbest then, he's going to go as long as possible I think on these mediums, but they're well past their use by date at this point, and there's still 15 laps left to run, including the one they're on, nodding up the inside to the hairpin. Very heavy on the brakes, and Ashbest would have had to take slightly avoiding action with that. We'll jump on board again with the car behind so we can really see what's going on in front of us side by side, P4 and P5. This is a true battle for position because both of them still need to make their second stop. Nikita would not be enjoying seeing these. Oh, a little bit of desync there from Ashbest. Unfortunately, the car ghosted somewhat, and that's allowed Ollie the easiest of moves through into P4. So with connection there, calms down a little bit for the racing point. And Ollie then takes back the P4. He lost to Midnight. And Ashbest, who restarted this race a few laps ago from the safety car in the lead, now slowly starts to fall down the order. We've got Rafa up the inside and making his way past Harry, who's also running those hard tyres. So the guys on the hard tyres, and I'm looking at the likes of Louie in second, Lakitu in P6, Harry 9th and Scott in 11th. Not so much Thomas, he's a long way back in 15th. But those guys on the hard tyres, those tyres will come better towards the end of the race, but they need to stay as close to the guys on the mediums for as long as possible. Most of these guys will be trying to carry these tyres to the end. The Red Bull of Toxic Tomato picks up a 3-second penalty, running now in 7th place, slowly closing up on Lakitu, who's stuck behind Ashbest now, and you can see there that Ollie is now disappeared in 4th, Midnight in 3rd as well. So Ash is now starting to struggle a little bit on these medium tyres, sort of half defends the inside, coming into the final chicane. It's not going to hurt his line through here, and exactly that, Ash took too much speed, wrong line into the final chicane. And Lakitu says thank you very much, does the old switcheroo and easily passes the racing point. And oh, it's a wild Toxic Tomato appearing on the outside of turn 2 as the Red Bull driver tries to fight his way past Ashbest. And this is the time now that Ash really needs to be getting out of the way and getting in the pits. Another driver, Rafa, trying to force his way through here as well, and Ash has lost 3 positions in 3 corners. Those medium tyres have gone at this point, absolutely gone. And it's an unusual call from the racing point. I don't really see anything he's going to gain from staying out on these medium tyres. The only way it's going to work really is if there's another safety car or something, or a virtual safety car, to try and limit the time loss in the pits, because he's in danger here of, once he makes his pit stop, rejoining down in about 13th or 14th place. It was an unusual strategy call there by Ash, and everyone up ahead really fighting over positions. Lakitu then managing to get past Toxic Tomato. In fact, Lakitu defending this P5 from the Red Bull of Toxic Tomato, who's got the DRS. Round the outside, down the back straight. Lakitu will have to give this one up. Further in the background as well, Ash and Harry fighting over 8th and 9th. How's that one going to play out? Look at the train behind Ash now, and he's still going round. Maybe he's trying to get onto those soft tyres before the end of the race. Ash still having connection issues. His car keeps ghosting in and out, which is going to be unsettling and off-putting for the drivers behind. But Harry now manages to make his way through into P8, and Skeever has to be very careful here he doesn't accidentally cream into the back of that racing point ahead, because Ash is going to have to brake a little easier, a little earlier. You've got yellow flags in sector 1. Someone in the background has had a moment. It's Scott Bugner, who's retired from the race on track, which we don't ask for his drivers to do. He's obviously dropped it on the exit of turn 5. And Scott then decides to retire. So we've lost 3 drivers now. Yellow flag still out in sector 2. So we'll come back to the front of the field, whilst the midfield still continues to squabble. Danny then with a 6.6 second lead over Louie. And unfortunately, I think that Louie going onto the hard tyres, whether it was a choice he made or whether it was a mistake, unfortunately it's not working out well for him. And Midnight in 3rd is slowly starting to creep up on Louie as well, just less than 2 seconds behind. It's been a good run as well by Ollie in P4, who's yet to make his second pit stop. Toxic in 5th, just 2 seconds back. Lakitu in 6th on those hard tyres. Rafa in 7th, slowly starting his recovery. It's been a rather poor show from Rafa tonight in the Williams. It's not the first time this season that we've seen Rafa really struggle. Usually he's a top 5 driver, top 5 contender, podium chaser, but the last couple of races he's not being the one of the quickest guys out there, and he's really been struggling this season. But he's in 7th at the moment, giving the old hurry up to Lakitu ahead in 6th. Harry a couple of seconds back on the hard tyres in 8th. Paris still very and thereabouts in the bottom half of the top 10, and White Fountain now finds himself up inside 10th place. Ashbest now in the pits for finally the second time, but look how much time he's lost. He's all the way at the back of the field, and we've got a yellow flag. Is that White Fountain having a moment? It was, as Danny in the lead picks up a 3-second penalty. Don't think that will hurt him too much at this stage, and White Fountain has damage on that front wing as well. So unfortunately it's going to be another race for the Toro Rosso driver where he's probably failing to score any points. Thomas has, I believe, disconnected again, because his car's ghosted. It's not the first time we've seen that Alfa Romeo ghosted today, so Wesley will be able to claim an easy P11. And it'll be P10 as well once White Fountain comes into and out of the pit. So Paris then in P9, giving the old hurry up to Harry in their battle for 8th. So Nikita there made a mistake in sector 2, picks up a 3-second time penalty as he gives chase to Toxic Tomato up the inside into the final chicane. And Toxic Tomato says, I'm having absolutely none of that, and decides to chuck that Red Bull into the pits for, I believe, his 3rd stop it will be now. Let's have a quick look then. Yeah, Toxic Tomato in the pits again. Larkin's made 4 stops, Westy and Thomas have both made 3, so Toxic then making a 3rd pit stop here, going on to the soft tyres. We might see a few other drivers do the same as well. Ollie then, still the only driver out there yet to complete his 2nd stop. And as per One Hub rules, if you don't make 2 stops in the race, you will be disqualified from the final classification. So Ollie will be fully aware of that, don't worry. And he's just biding his time, waiting to come into the pits, putting on a set of what I would assume soft tyres. Rafa and Nikito exchange positions. Nikito struggling a little bit on those hard tyres. Whilst we're at it, we might as well bring up the fastest lap. We'll talk about that very quickly. So Skeven currently has the fastest lap, all the way down in 13th place. Now the way the fastest lap works for One Hub Racing is that if you finish inside the top 10 and claim the fastest lap of those drivers in the top 10, you obviously gain a World Championship point. But One Hub do something very differently, which I like to call bracket number 2, which is of all the classified drivers, and so far there's 5 of them from 11th down to 15th. If you set the fastest lap out of that collection of drivers, you gain an extra World Championship point. It's an incentive to the drivers to basically say, look, if you're 2 laps down running in position nowhere, don't quit the race, don't retire, don't give up, come in with a couple laps to go, put on a set of soft tyres, try to claim a fast lap. You might be able to get a championship point. We've seen it before, we see it all the time. Drivers down in 13th, 14th, 15th go for the fastest lap and claim an extra point. So Toxic again, now out on the soft tyres. We'd be expecting him to be blindingly fast in this fastest lap. Will now start to tumble. And he's 11 seconds behind Harry, so he might catch him on track, but I wouldn't be surprised if we see a few more drivers in the pits possibly going onto the soft tyres. Danny now has an 8.5 second lead over Louie, so Danny's checked out at the front. There's quite a few time penalties out there. And before anyone asks, I will not be checking to see who has what. If some of you have been keeping tabs on your favourite driver or a certain driver and how many he's got, then fair enough. But I like the surprise at the end of the race. I like calling the action how I see it, as Ollie from P4 finally comes in for a 2nd stop. And it's always exciting when you get a group of cars close together coming across the line if they do change positions, and it can be really exciting. We saw a few weeks ago Austria Toxic Tomato crossed the line in 3rd and won the race because the 2 cars ahead of him had time penalties, and I didn't know that, so it's a great surprise to see for you guys and for myself to see the order change as they cross the line. So Harry then up into 7th, Toxic in 8th. Ollie rejoined, now completed his 2nd stop. So all drivers have now done at least the 2 stops, the minimum 2 stops that they need to. And Ollie out then on a fresh set of super sticky, sweet, soft tyres, and he'll be loving the grip on these after pounding around on those mediums for probably a few too many laps than he needed to. So 9th place then for the McLaren driver, and he'll be wanting some good points. And he's behind, yet again, another Red Bull driver. He's been around the Red Bulls all night, and it's a point to prove. He proved a point against Midnight, not giving up the position easy to his former teammate. And now he's going to want to apply a little bit of pressure here to the man that's replaced him at Red Bull, Toxic Tomato. But he's on the soft tyres as well. And I think, with all due respect to Ollie, I think head-to-head, Toxic is the generally quicker driver. But Ollie's still running inside the top 10. And he'll be looking to score points in every race now before the end of the season. The same for Toxic to validate the choice that Red Bull have made by plucking him from McLaren and putting him in a top team. So Harry in 7th running those hard tyres. Same for the Keto in P5. A gap at the front, now up to nearly 10 seconds. So Danny's pretty much all but won this race. There's only a few laps left to go. I don't think anyone really from the top 7 is going to want to pit, because they will now lose track position. So I think this is pretty much the order now. Penalties would almost certainly change it. There's probably a few out there with 6, 9, 12 seconds worth of penalties. But Danny Ben's pretty much checked out at the front of the field, nearly 10 seconds ahead of Louie now. Midnight still chipping away, still sees a possible P2. Penalties, of course, could change it. I don't think Louie has any. Midnight, I'm sure, has at least 3 seconds, but he's slowly bringing that gap down. It's a 10th here, a 10th there. And a couple more laps of this, and he might be within DRS range. Bounces across the curbs there at the farm chicane. We've seen no one cream it into the Wall of Champions yet. We've seen a few people flirt with it. A couple of little love taps on the right rear wheel, but no one's ended their race in the wall. We've lost 3 drivers so far. Zach, who I can't really explain what happened at the hairpin, but completely messed up his braking point and overshot the hairpin by about 400 yards, forcing poor old Larkin off the circuit, which is why he dropped back from his teammate. And Zach then pulled into the pits to retire. Colin, I believe, crashed on the exit of turn 3, which brought out the midway safety car, and Scott Bugner spun a few laps ago at the end of sector 1 and also retired from the race. Skeeven in the pits again for, I believe, either the 3rd or 4th time. So it's been a poor race all round for the Alfa Romeo drivers. They're going to be now 14th and 15th at the back of the field. Poor old Ashbest as well. Yeah, it was a strange call for him to not pit under the safety car. It wouldn't have worked out for him. It hasn't. He's out in 13th place, and most of the drivers ahead of him in the bottom of the top 10, all on the soft tyres. He might gain a position over Westy, but with only a few laps left, I can't really see Ash making any sort of inroads from that P13. Danny Venn, lap 32 of 35, just 4 laps to go now. He's checked out at the front, over 10 seconds ahead of Louie. I think Louie will be... I'm surprised that Louie went for the hard tyres, to be honest with you. I thought most would go for the mediums. I certainly would have expected Louie to go for the medium tyres. Of course, there's still a risk that Danny, his tyres can completely drop off. He's got to do pretty much half the race, just over half the race, on a set of medium tyres. I don't think he'll be in puncture territory, but he'll certainly be losing grip. We'll jump on board and have a look at those tyres. There is slight discoloration on the inner and outer wall of those front tyres, so obviously the tyre wear rate is a bit high for the mediums, as you would expect, having already completed 16 laps, but I think Danny will be comfortable on those to get to the end. Lakitu and Rafa exchanging positions for P4 and P5, so the hard tyres have worked out pretty well for Lakitu, and obviously at this stage of the race now, the hards will probably be the better tyres to be on. And Lakitu is certainly taking advantage of that, jumping up into P4, pushing Rafa down into 5th. It's been a decent recovery drive from Rafa, but he has been off the pace and has been for the last few races. Same for Paris as well, who failed to set a lap time in qualifying. So 2 of the Williams and 2 of the Mercedes are occupying the top 6 positions. And Lakitu and Rafa exchanging positions again. Lakitu picks up a 3-second penalty, so this is not over for P4. And Rafa has found a sudden burst of speed from somewhere. Because only a few laps ago he was down in about 7th or 8th. Ashbest and White Fountain exchange positions for P12 down at the hairpin. But unfortunately for the Racing Point driver and the Racing Point team, I don't think points are going to be had tonight. Same for the Alfa Romeo guys and the Toro Rossos as well. I don't think they're going to be troubling the Constructors' Championships any time soon. So the Keto ends dropped back a little bit from Rafa. He's just weaving a little bit down the little straight here in the DRS zone, trying to minimise the slipstream he'll be offering the Ferrari of Lakitu. But this is not going to be over, and Paris is, I think, slowly creeping up on this. So we could have a 3-way fight for 4th, 5th and 6th. Meanwhile, just ahead of these guys, Midnight, a couple of laps ago, is 1.5 seconds behind Louie. Still that gap as well, so I think the top 3 now pretty much set in stone. This battle, though, is not over, and Lakitu then back past into P4 with the DRS. Larkin in 11th picks up another 3-second time penalty. So the order will chop and change up and down the final classification depending on how many penalties some of these drivers have. But just 2 laps to go then. Haven't seen too much of Danny or Louie since the restart. All the action has been behind them. And I think Paris is just a bit too far back to be challenging Rafa for P5. Further down, Harry finds himself comfortably on his own in P7. Same for Ollie in P8, just lighting up the rear tyres coming out of turn 2. Toxic then has now fallen behind Ollie, so somewhere I've missed that. Ollie has managed to get past the Red Bull. I don't know if does he have any damage? He does. So Toxic's been off the road somewhere. He's hit the wall, which is why he's losing so much time. Westy has an outside chance of P9 here. We get yellow flags in sector 3. It looks like White Fountain going slowly. It is. So again, White Fountain really in the wars. He might just been slowing down a little bit actually to give himself a bit of space to Danny ahead, and White Fountain might be going for the fastest lap here. But Danny then starts his final lap, 10 seconds clear of Louie, checked out at the front. Midnight then, he's now 2 seconds away from Louie. The hard tyres now slowly starting to work for him, but it's too little too late. And I think Midnight will happily circulate around to claim the final podium spot. Likitu and Rafa are still fighting over 4th and 5th. Paris can't really do too much about it in 6th. Harry comfortable in 7th. Ollie comfortable in 8th. Toxic will just about, I think, get that Red Bull home in P9. But there's Westy in the background who will be seeing the gap between himself and the Red Bull tumble down with every corner. And that really is a battered front wing. So I think Toxic may very well be in trouble here of losing that P9. Larkin just outside the points in 11th. He'll be hoping that people ahead of him have a lot of penalties. Strange call by Ash to not pit under the safety car. It hasn't worked out. It was never going to in P12. Skeven, quiet, poor race from the Alfa Romeo driver in 13th, and a quiet, poor debut as well from Thomas in 15th, who I believe is disconnected for the 17th time. White Fountain trying to go for the fastest lap, but Danny then comes across the line, weaving from left to right. He'll be happy. It's 25 points. White Fountain does not take the fastest lap of the race, and Danny back with a bang after his absence a couple of weeks ago at Singapore. Louie across the line in P2, Midnight across the line in P3. Those guys remain as they are. Likitu then will cross the line in 4th with Rafa just behind. Does he keep P4 ahead of the Ferrari? Indeed he does. Paris across the line in 6th place. Harry for the Haas team across in 7th and jumps all the way up into P4. Ollie gets promoted to P7 as well, so Paris had a lot of penalties. Toxic will just hang on to P9 ahead of Westy. That could still change with penalties. I think it will actually. Toxic in 9th. Westy does take P9. Does Larkin get the unlikeliest of points crossing the line? He doesn't. Remains in P11. Ashbest across the line, classified in P12. And then we wait for Skeven in 13th and Thomas down in 14th. So congratulations to Danny Moreno and the Mercedes team. Second on the grid, put the medium tyres on in the safety car period. Found the gap he needed to Louie, a good 10-second gap as well. And back fighting in this championship with 25 points and the race win. Louie, I don't think we'll be too disappointed. He did what he needed to do, coming home in 2nd place. And Midnight, ever impressive, as you would expect from the Red Bull driver, rounding out the podium with P3. So final classification, every driver apart from Thomas down in 13th had a time penalty, but most was only in the 3 to 6 second window. So outside of it, Harry then, he only had 3 seconds worth of penalties, and look at that, jumps all the way up into P4 from 6th on the grid. Likitu then pushed down to 5th, Rafa in 6th. Ollie then, good drive from the McLaren, new McLaren driver from 12th into 7th. Paris, good recovery from him into 8th from 17th, and Westy picking up a couple of points from a very lowly 18th. And it's Toxic, Tomato, Larkin, Ashbest, Thomas, Skeven and White Fountain as your final classified driver. So as we make our way back to the lobby screen, the only thing left for me to do, of course, is talk about the driver of the day nominations. Now, as a solo commentator, I have to come up with both of the nominations. The first one is going to be for Danny in the Mercedes, second on the grid. and has managed to win the race, putting on the medium tyres underneath the safety car, which I think Louie will be a bit disappointed about. He probably should have gone for the mediums himself, but I think really that if you win the race, you should be given a driver of the day vote, because he was obviously the quickest on the night, and walk away with the 25 points. There's a few candidates out there for the second vote. We've had a few drivers start towards the back of the field that have managed to pick up points. I'm looking at the likes of Paris and Westy as well, but I think Ollie in the McLaren deserves the second vote. Qualified in 12th, finished in 7th place, and I think proved probably a few of the doubters wrong tonight. He managed to beat Toxic Tomato, who was his replacement at the Red Bull team, and had a good spirited defensive battle against his old teammate Midnight as well. And I think Ollie will go away from this having proved a point to some of the doubters out there after being dropped from the Red Bull team and demoted, if you like, to the McLaren outfit. So I think Ollie will go away tonight with a smile on his face and going, yeah, I deserve to keep a seat in this tier, and I think he'll be happy with his 7th place overall. So my 2 driver of the day nominations, which will be announced and put up on Twitter for you to all vote for in the next few days by One Hub, will be for Danny Moreno for winning the race, and Ollie as well for a good spirited battle up into 7th place. A final mention for me is obviously our main league sponsor, Next Level Racing. Do make sure you check them out as well. They have some fantastic gear, some seats, some wheels, some proper sim racing rigs. So if you are a sim racer at mind and want to immerse yourself as much as you can in the realistic way of racing, then do check them out. They do offer some really good quality gear, and they have been a sponsor of One Hub Racing for quite a while, and they do offer prizes as well. It's not just a case of giving them a plug. They do support the league, and they do offer prizes to drivers for winning stuff and everything like that as well. So it's not just a case of we're just plugging a random company. They do work with us very, very well. So do check them out if you're looking to invest in some gear, certainly with F1 2020 now just around the corner. So thank you very much to everyone watching tonight. I'll be back, of course, with some more Pinnacle tier action next week at 8:30. Thank you very much for tuning in, and enjoy the rest of your evening.